light in her eyes.
Mm-hmm. Agreed, and that's an excellent point. There was something about Naomi that Ruth saw and says, I want that.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of relationship Ruth had with her folks. She was a young girl. She could have gone home.
Yeah.
That is, of course, in that culture, you really don't, hi, Mom and Dad, I'm back. Because Dad's going to say, no, we're going to get you married off.
Find her another man.
Exactly. So yeah, there was something about Naomi
Yeah.
that Ruth really took on to. Yes?
Well, like my pastor in Arizona, I like how his family all calls it mother-in-law, daughter-in-law. They don't say law at all.
Right.
Because they said we didn't get married for law reasons. We got married for love.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So they always say that they never use in-law or anything like that. They always say in-law. So I thought that was a pretty good attribute.
It is.
And
Yeah.
they have great relationships with both sides. Both, you know, she has a great relationship with his mom and vice versa. It's really good.
Right.
It's nice.
Yeah. And and as you go through life and you see these relationships, you know, I can kind of kid, you know, my former mother-in-law, it was a family of outlaws. And
What?
my former mother-in-law
Uh-huh.
is from a family of outlaws.
That's what my dad always called my grandma, his mother-in-law. He
Yeah.
always called her outlaw.
Well, they
A mother and outlaw.
apparently her family rode with the Jesse James gang and the Elder gang and all that stuff. That's her family. So I kind of, so when I see my kids, like, oh yeah,
See?
See, there it is. Okay, so Ruth, you pointed out very well that very, very dedicated. Very dedicated. What else about Ruth do we find?
I find Naomi and Ruth period just amazing. Because we already said there must have been something absolutely spectacular about Naomi and her character for Ruth to want to continue following her after her husband died.
Right.
Now, whether that's maybe a little bit of sympathy because yes, Ruth lost her husband, but her mother-in-law lost her husband and her two sons all at the same time.
Right.
While she simply lost her husband.
Yes.
But it's interesting if you, like when you go into the story, Naomi's attitude doesn't stay pretty.
No.
She's very bitter and mad and upset that she lost so much. But Ruth continued to stay with her and continued to follow her. So, I mean, that's just, to me,
Kind of a
that's-
twist, all of a sudden,
Yes.
the daughter-in-law is being an example to
Yes.
the mother-in-law because of what she learned from the mother-in-law.
Being exactly what she's maybe gleaned from.
Yeah.
Life got real for Naomi.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
you see these posts all the time. Oh, it's getting real. Yeah.
Well, and she kept trying to get her. She beckoned to Ruth more than once to go home.
Yes.
Go back to your people.
Right. And I think it was more of a feeling sorry for myself.
Yes.
You know,
Exactly.
nobody loves me, everybody hates me, think I'll go eat worms.
Yeah.
Alexander, the terrible, horrible
I have
movie, very bad day.
I know when I have nothing.
Exactly.
And a
No,
woman
no.
lost her status when she lost her husband.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
A woman lost her status when she lost her
Yes,
husband.
exactly, exactly.
If you want to do cultural analysis, Bishop, a woman lost her status. So now you have a mother-in-law who has no status with a daughter-in-law who also lost her husband who has no status.
And they have nowhere to support
They have
themselves.
they have
Well,
nothing
yeah, because the
else.
sons are supposed to take care of when they're
Right.
gone. So now
Yeah.
who took care of them?
Now they have nothing.
Exactly.
They
have
take
each
care
other.
of themselves.
Right, and Ruth, she took on that responsibility.
Yeah.
She became a hard worker. She was probably a hard worker before.
Yes.
She just didn't wake up one day and say, I'm gonna be a hard worker. No, she was
Yeah.
probably
Oh, yeah.
she was a hard worker from the get-go. And I think maybe that's why she and Naomi clicked so well. Because Naomi, having
From
two
the same
boys,
cloth.
Yeah.
exactly, two boys and a husband, I mean, it's work raising those boys.
Yeah.
And so Ruth, being the hard worker because she's out gleaning in the fields.
Yeah.
She's out gathering. She's out doing her thing.
And she was very obedient to Naomi. Naomi told her, go here, do this, before, only this person.
Right.
And she did everything the mother-in-law asked her to. In the midst of her bitterness and anger and her hurt, she still listened to the advice of her mother-in-law.
Now, and that's interesting.
It is.
She had the card up her sleeve the whole time, but she wasn't letting that out.
Mhm.
She still had connections back in the old
Yeah.
land,
Yeah,
but for some reason she was kind of keeping that stuff down her
Yeah.
sleeve a little bit until
exactly.
it's like her get out of jail card. Okay,
Yeah. She could have taken Ruth straight to Boaz.
she could have, but why she didn't? That's a good question.
She wanted Boaz to follow her.
Well, there was somebody else in line before Boaz too. So she had to maneuver things so that Boaz would want to
Yeah.
get the other dude out of the way.
At,
You bet.
at what point do you think that happened for Naomi? Because initially we say, go back to your people, leave me alone, I'm just gonna go do my thing. At what point do you think Naomi, in her mind, said, okay, I'm gonna make it so she's with Boaz?
I think that probably after she had told Ruth, go home, go home, go home, and Ruth just kept saying, no, I'm gonna stay with you, and because she was obedient and did everything that Naomi asked her to do, I think that that's when she said, okay, I'm going to,
Be the mom again?
yeah. I'm
Okay.
gonna-
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen this before, I told my boys and they did it, oh, this looks familiar. You think she maybe tested the waters a little bit to see what kind of what the mettle of Ruth was?
Without her.
Do you think maybe her at go was a test?
Well, it could have been, or it could have been God working through her, because she was still so sad and bitter. She probably didn't come up with this on her own, like none of us come up with great
Yeah.
ideas on our own. God was using her and giving her these ideas to test Ruth. And in the end,
Right.
Well, our
Ruth-
empty, idle hands is the playground.
right,
And so God said, I'm gonna stick Ruth in your hands. Girl,
yeah.
you need something, because you're
Right.
so bitter and angry right now, I'm gonna give you Ruth.
Right.
Do something with what I've given you.
And she could have been just going through a period of mourning.
Yes.
She had to go through that phase of her life before she could figure, okay, now I know what to do.
Right.
And she may just need to process that.
And that's absolutely true. And Ruth was there with her in that morning time. And so then I think those things all working together, Naomi probably woke up one day and said, you know what? Okay, I really don't want this girl to go home. I want to hang out with her. I got an idea. And I've seen the look. When a woman gets an idea, Tony, you've seen the look. Kevin, you've seen the look. When you girls get that idea, it's like, ooh. And then we're like, uh-oh. Vic, you've seen the look.
No. Not as far as you know.
Wise man. Only because.
I know how to answer.
Only because I'm a good woman in the fact that I make him believe it was his idea.
Wow.
That's a Rouge sign here.
It's getting deep in here now.
He's got his boots on.
Yeah, now you know why I wear boots.
It's getting deep in here.
Good, yeah.
Yeah.
So Ruth has solid metal in her. Naomi recognizes that and says, okay, I know the man for this girl. So here's what we're gonna do. So she cooks up this plan, and it actually works out pretty ingenious, if you think about it. Ruth knew the culture well enough because that's her home. She knew the practices, so she wasn't a dummy. She knew that the kinsman redeemer had to do some things.
Yeah.
And she really didn't set the stage. She didn't have to set too much of the pieces of the puzzle. I think she just saw an opportunity for a good man to have a good woman and said, okay, yes, by law you can do this, but like you had said, let's make this man fall in love with you. Because by law he can take you.
Yeah.
But let's do it both,
Yeah.
you know.
And in return, she was also
Walking it
very
out.
well taken care of.
She was very well taken care of.
Yeah.
And not only was she well taken care of, so was Ruth. Or Naomi.
Yes, yeah, that's what I meant.
Oh,
Naomi
oh,
was
yes.
very well taken care
Naomi
of
was-
because
Yeah.
of this arrangement.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
she was blessed in the end because she was able to hold grandbabies
Yeah,
that she called hers,
yeah,
when legally they weren't, but she considered them her grandbabies.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful, beautiful story. If you really, I mean, we could spend
Yeah.
a long time just picking apart the whole thing. That relationship though is unique because it has a little bit of tension in there. But I think Naomi was pretty wise.
Yeah.
She's portrayed a lot of times in scripture by a lot of people as a downer. Woe is me and Eeyore. Okay, let's go. She, you know, but she wasn't as, oh, not conniving, but not as shrewd as Rahab that we talked about last night.
Yeah.
Because Rahab had a different lifestyle. She was, but I think Naomi was sharp. I think she was smart.
You can't say she was drowning in
No,
mourning, because someone who's so consumed in drowning in their mourning doesn't even see any of the outside picture.
they don't see,
And it was
they don't see
obvious
opportunities.
that Naomi still saw opportunities. She knew, first of all, she had to go back to, and you know, your land, your people in that day and age was a very important thing. So the first thing she knew is, I gotta go back to my land, my people, back to what I know, and she took Ruth with her.
Yes.
And so, I mean, obviously, we can see from scripture that, yes, she was hurting. But at the same time, still holding on to who she is and what she knows, so.
Right, yes.
yeah.
What a beautiful story of mentor and
Yes.
teacher and student, mentor and student.
Now, from a woman's perspective, okay, Boaz. Knowing who Boaz was, what is your thoughts on Boaz? From a woman's perspective.
I simply have to agree, man, I'm so character. Simply because out cleaning in the fields was probably many women
Yes,
and probably many opportunities.
good point.
And yet we don't hear him taking that opportunity. He was a man that
Yeah.
he had wealth, he had
And he also made sure, just as Hannah's husband did before he even made Ruth his wife, had his servants leave some of the best where she was gleaning.
yeah.
Yeah, it was kind
Yep.
of love
He
at
was-
first sight for Boaz.
Yeah,
It
he
around the
was,
gate. But he was also, he was out working in the fields. He was
Yeah.
part of what his workers were doing.
he was a
He
good
didn't have to be
leader.
there.
Right.
He could have been at home and everybody doing their stuff, but he was there on the threshing floor.
And it was also,
He led by example.
he did,
Yeah.
he was
And
also,
Pastor
re-
Kevin.
he was also respected
Yeah.
because he sat at the gate
Yeah.
with the elders.
Yeah.
And Joe Sixpack don't go and just sit with the elders unless they're respected. You
Yeah.
gotta be recognized, you have to be someone that's, oh, they're worthy to have a spot right over here
They're
with the
usually
rest of the elders.
Usually men of action.
They are.
Yeah.
They're guys that make decisions, they're guys that basically run the town.
Yeah.
So those were kinda his homies, a little bit.
I think too, he had a different perspective. Boaz was, it could be that what he reaped was a blessing for doing the right thing. I don't know the way I read it, but he actually really glimpsed her into who she was when he first saw her getting the gleaning. I think he was trying to be mission-minded, caring for somebody who had nothing. Because he came from that. His mother or grandmother was Rahab. So he's been on the outside. His
Great-grandmother.
family came
Yeah.
from the outside. So he
You're right,
gets
right.
that, and he may have been giving back, sowing back into that, and then gave that.
Well,
So
that
I
was
think
the
he's
law, that's
different than most men.
But
He had
I
to.
think in the story of Rahab. it-
Yeah,
it
and
goes
I was
on to
wanting
talk
your,
about the
your
relationship.
take since, you know,
Yeah.
your ministry is now in that Rahab
Yeah.
theater, I was really hoping to draw that perspective out of you, so I'm glad you're bringing this up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he sees it differently. He wasn't like always, his entire family is not Jewish, like I said, he's got a piece of his family that was not.
Yeah.
And so he came from the outside, so an outsider trying to clean
Yeah.
means more to him than the
Right.
average person.
Yes, good
I
point.
heard someone preach on this story one time, and I just loved how they said it, you know. Not sure this is how it happened, folks, but I see it as this. Boaz left things, you know, good portions for Ruth to glean because he found out from his servants that she was taking care of not her mother, but her mother-in-law. And in those days, that just didn't happen very often. And so that touched his heart, that he stood back, you know, and the way the pastor presented it, it was just beautiful. He goes, no, I don't know exactly that this is how it happened, but looking at the character of Boaz, looking at the characteristics of Naomi and Ruth, I can see him as a man going, she stayed with her mother-in-law and she's
Yeah.
providing for her. Well, let's give her extra.
Right.
Well, and
Basi-
culturally, it wasn't, she was an outsider. She's not one of his
Right.
people. And it's obvious, I'm sure, in how she looks, it's obvious she's an outsider. And so for him to have compassion on her as an outsider speaks a lot of him.
Yeah.
Right.
Because especially the young men were taught about their people, their culture, their, you know, their identity, who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that she, like you're saying, that he noticed an outsider and had extra compassion. And then I think that probably finding out what she was doing stirred up some extra, because he's already coming from the outside.
Right.
He's another outsider who is just full of all this compassion. And the way that he goes and gets the rights to Naomi and Ruth is almost a little sneaky, and I think it's awesome. So you know that somewhere, there was
Yeah,
something special about Ruth
yeah,
that just set something off in him that he's like, that's,
He probably like,
Okay.
she's doing her a solid, I'm gonna do her a solid. You know, she's living it out, so I'm gonna
Yeah,
go for it. And I think if we look at it, we step back from what scripture says, we look at it through the lenses of just humanity and real life. I think you're close to saying or Boaz may have gone, I'm kind of digging on her just because he was a man of character, a man of hard work, and seeing somebody else, a woman doing that, caring for somebody else, he's like, ooh, baby. You know? So that could have happened. You know, and then as you know, in the industry that you guys work with, those individuals that do good for people in there, they return that favor. You know, and so I think you're right with that background that Boaz was at least not familiar with, but at least he had a little bit of a knowledge of through his grandmother. Yeah, very good. Anything else? So far, so good? Okay, let's take a break before we move on to Bathsheba. She's one of my favorites in Scripture. Yeah, she is. When we originally took the class, like I said, Bathsheba was not mentioned in the original syllabus. And I
Oh, she's one you added.
I added Rahab and I added Bathsheba because A, they're the lineage of Jesus Christ,
Right.
but B, they're women that their stories are just you can't not look at them as a matriarch in Scripture. So anyway,
Cool. Thank you, Mark.
well, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Get a break?
Thank you,